which we are now live, and we will start recording here in a moment. I'm just going to make sure you can hear the cues. You can hear this.
Sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit.
Yes, I can eat it. Isn't that shit? Eat shit.
Okay, good. So that'll work. And let's do this. I am going to, let's do a 3, 2, 1 clap, just so I've got a mark to match up.
No problem.
And hey, Nisbet, how's it going? All right, so I'll count it down and we'll do a clap. We'll get a mark on the audio in 3,
Okay.
2, 1, clap. Perfect. All right. Well, if you're ready, I'm ready. I think we can do this thing.
Yes, sir. I'm ready.
All right. Well, in that case, then, we are... Where's my record button? There it is. We are going to be starting in 3, 2, 1.
When I was lying there in the VA hospital with a big hole blown through the middle of my life, I started having these dreams of flying. I was free. Sooner or later, though, you always have to wake up.
Okay, we're off now. Let's go.
Hello and welcome. Welcome and hello. This is Wait, You Haven't Seen? It's a show where we talk about movies, and specifically, we talk about a movie at least one of us has never seen before. I'm your host, Travis, a.k.a. TV's Travis, and this is episode number 175. And our movie this week is 2009's Avatar, written and directed by James Cameron. And joining me, because somehow he had never seen it before, I think you're one of like 5 people, is Trip Rogers. Trip, how you doing?
Yes, I guess you're right. I'm one of 5 people who haven't seen it. And as I told you, and I guess I should let you in on this, everybody else know, I hadn't seen the movie. I'd heard about it and already raved about it, but I never watched it. And recently went down to the Special Olympics USA Games down in Orlando. And one of the things that they did for my sister was a coach, by the way, of the New Jersey tennis team.
Okay.
So one of the things, special things that they did is they had a night at Animal Kingdom. And part of it was you could go on the Avatar ride there. So we got our little, ticket, our Fast Pass ticket, and we went on the Avatar ride. Now, I'm going through the pre-show and everything. I have no clue what the hell's going on. Okay, I get the idea, though, but again, the soaring and you're flying and everything. So it kind of spurred me and my fiance to both watch the movie. And so we watched it as soon as we got home. And it was really interesting to watch it and to then understand it. Mm-hmm. And of course, what makes this also why this is so topical is the fact that the sequel is coming out at the end of this year.
Yeah.
And in fact, I didn't realize James Cameron's going to be doing 4 sequels this year, 2 years, and then they've done the shooting on the next 2, and then he's going to do, he's going to do 2 more. So very ambitious for James Cameron, but again, the movie itself, and listen, the ride is a must-see ride at Disney World.
Oh, absolutely. So I want to get into the sequels at some point because there's actually a fair bit to kind of unpack on that. But I make the joke that you're one of 5 people that hadn't seen it because this was, in 2009, this became the highest grossing film of all time, beating out James Cameron's previous film, Titanic. And went on to be the highest grossing film until Avengers Endgame unseated it. I believe they've kind of flip-flopped and jockeyed a little bit as there was an Avatar re-release at some point. I don't know exactly, but this movie was just one of those that it felt like everyone had seen it. But the weird thing is so many people had seen this movie, and yet for a number of years, I feel like nobody talked about Avatar either. It was like
I agree.
For a film to make $1 billion at the box office and be kind of almost culturally irrelevant in a lot of ways, because it's not like there was the fandom of a Star Wars. Now, granted, Star Wars had more movies, but it's odd to me. And you mentioned the Disney ride. Disney owns it after buying Fox, and so they've done a lot to help promote it and get these sequels made and all that. But it's becoming more. It feels like it's coming back around and cycling through. This movie's 13 years old now, which is incredible to think about. But it is nice to see. It's nice to see it gaining some relevance again. I saw it in theaters. I went, and I will say this: the experience of seeing this in the theater in 2009 was pretty unlike anything I had ever done, because James Cameron famously spent a long time making this movie, and the actual shooting of it took 4 years from pre-production to release, in part because he did everything 3D. It was a fully digital production at the time. He did all sorts of crazy 3D, and I'll tell you what, this was one of the few times seeing a movie in 3D in a theater, I was like, all right, I get why.
And I was going to, I think one of the reasons why you mentioned the relevance has gone away is because 3D movies essentially no longer really exist. I mean, 3D movies have stopped being made. And like I said, I think part of it was you had either a very well done 3D movie, such as James Cameron did with Avatar, and then most of the 3D movies were either converted or they looked like garbage. And I agree with what you said though. This movie, I mean, listen, I I will admit I suffer from motion sickness, and getting on this ride, I had a little touch of it. And then watching it on TV, I kind of got it again. And the only other time that's happened to me is with Despicable Me, where they do the roller coaster ride
Yeah.
in the first Despicable Me movie. Well, I saw it in 3D. I got motion sickness in the theater. I'm watching it with my daughter on Christmas Day, and I'm getting motion sickness again. So that's one of the reasons why I think in Avatar, and the other part of it is that, and I'll say this because James Cameron is a victim of his own success. Because let's be realistic, he started with the Terminator movies, and they did really well. And then he did Titanic, which was, one of the most unbelievable movies, and it did so well. And then he follows it up with Avatar. And so it's kind of like Michael Jackson after Thriller and Bad. Where can Michael Jackson go after this? And James Cameron has kind of taken a step back. He's gotten away from this for a little bit, and now he's coming back with Avatar. He's doing it the right way. He's doing it the way he wants to do it. And again, I'll be curious to see what your comment is. I think Avatar will become more relevant now because of the fact the sequel's coming out. And I think with 13 years, you now have a group of kids who may not have seen it and will now get to experience Avatar or have gone to Disney, experienced the ride, have watched the movie. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm pretty sure they'll probably put the first Avatar and then the second one, they'll do like one of those premiere things where they'll have both movies running back to back. I think you're going to see a lot of people wanting to see it that way because of that effect and seeing it on the big screen.
Oh, sure. I have no doubt that that will happen. It's interesting because we're now further from the making, like the release of Avatar and its sequel is a longer gap than there was the gap between, or about the same as Titanic and Avatar, like how long it took him to do. In between that, he did a few documentaries and things of note, but film-wise, James Cameron's filmography is actually pretty small. He tends to take several years between projects because it was like we can discount Piranha 2. It was his first major release, but it nearly tanked his entire career before it got started.
Forgive me for laughing. I'm probably one of the only people who like those movies. The Piranha movies were hysterical. I mean, I love that kind of.
Oh, sure.
I'm a fan of Machete.
Yeah,
I'm a fan of Machete. I mean,
yeah, there's definitely there's a market for stuff like that. But Piranha 2, I think it was 81, and it didn't review well at the time. And then, but he comes out with the Terminator, and it's such a great little kind of bottle movie. It's basically a horror movie with a sci-fi undertone to it. Then for some reason he does a sci-fi movie with horror undertones. So he just flips the script on himself with aliens. He kind of sort of the same thing. Like he builds up, and then he has not a misstep, but Abyss was sort of even keel with aliens, but then takes another step up. T2, Terminator 2 is one of the greatest sequels that's ever been produced because he built off of and a thing that shouldn't have worked. Right? There's no reason to do a sequel to the Terminator, none whatsoever. He found a way to do that and make it a super enjoyable movie because he didn't try to redo what the Terminator was. He went in a different direction. And that's what I'm hoping he will do with the Avatar sequels, is not just try to remake what Avatar was, but give it something new, which it needs. This movie, I'm going to have some negative things to say about it as well, because I don't think it's a perfect movie by any stretch. It is enjoyable, though. I will say that. I do have a good time with it. But I definitely, I have some issues, and it's mostly with the script. But the cast is really good overall. What do you think about Sam Worthington as like your leading man, as Jake Sully?
See, the thing about a movie like this, and I understand, and I catch what you're saying, and I'm also going along with James Cameron. Remember, he struck gold with Schwarzenegger in the Terminator,
Mm-hmm.
and Terminator 2. I think he struck gold because, well, oh yeah, let's see, the wife had to be cast in it because, oh yeah, she was married to him. But the point I make is Linda Hamilton was good, and Edward Furlong fit that movie. And I also, so you go to Titanic and you look at the cast in Titanic, and listen, James Cameron, if anything, has an eye for a cast.
Mm-hmm.
Worthington as the lead, he kind of grew on me. I thought he did a great job, but again, you look at everybody else who was surrounding him in this cast, and I really think, I mean, listen, I think everybody did well in this movie. Again, it was enjoyable. I didn't sit there and go, yeah, I missed this movie. But yet, when I saw it, I said, "Oh, I'm glad I did." And I agree with you. I don't think it's a perfect movie, but again, a sequel after a certain number of years works. And I was gonna, and of course, it popped out of my mind now. Um, Recently, went to the movies and saw, Top Gun,
Mm-hmm.
the sequel to Top Gun.
Right.
And the thing about it is that I got the same feeling watching Top Gun as I did when I saw the seventh, the number Star Wars 7,
Yeah.
when they went back and redid it, when Lucas went back and redid it, or the new series. I got this feeling I'm putting on an old pair of shoes. It feels right. Top Gun, again, it just hit the theme, and it's just, oh man, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Of course, I went and saw it on IMAX, and I got to tell you, that was a movie that was made for IMAX. It was
Oh,
really cool. But
absolutely.
but where I'm going with this is, I agree with you. I think the time between the two movies gives you that space to where you're not rushing a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember, and correct me if I'm wrong. Terminator was mid 80s, and Terminator 2 was early 90s. There was a
Yeah.
gap there. So it wasn't like, you had the Back to the Future movie in 85, then you had the sequel in 88 and 89. They were right close together.
Yeah.
There's enough of a gap there that I think people can, I guess, cleanse your palate. Does that? I mean, maybe I'm making a stupid thing, but I'm just saying that it's. I think there's enough of a room where the movie could stand on its own.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's the way I would look at it.
No, I think you're not wrong in that, like, certain movies, I think a sequel and a continuation of the story, if the world building is done right, need to come out within a certain cadence. The Back to the Future movies, they kind of did the one, but they set you up for a sequel during that one right at the end in a way that you almost need to kind of jump on it. The Harry Potter films are something where, because they're done every year and you've got young people in the cast, you've got to get those going fairly regularly. You're right in that Terminator came out in 84 and Terminator 2 was 1991. So there was a gap there. He had done 91, 92. But he did Aliens and then The Abyss in between that. So, but there it kind of worked because, again, like I say, Terminator itself is self-contained. It doesn't need anything. So if you're going to do a sequel to something like that, you need to take your time with it and do it right. I'm hopeful that that's going to be the case with these Avatar sequels. It's very ambitious to do sequels back to back, but it's even more ambitious to plot out 4 movies over the next, I believe it's 8 years, is what I saw for releases. I know that they did 2 and 3 together, which is,
they did 2 and 3, and it's this December and then December 2024. The subsequent sequels will be 2026 and 2028. So I'm guessing they're going to do the same thing they did, is shoot both movies at the same time. And part of that also is because you've got to have your actors available. And again, for all the special effects, and there are a lot, this is a special effects laden movie. And the thing I wanted, talk about special effects, and I know that Cameron will do this right. I mean, because we've seen it in other movies that he's done. But I gotta say, I saw the new Jurassic Park movie, or Jurassic World, excuse me, Dominion. And the one thing that really bothered me was the special effects. It just seemed that I don't know, they weren't as good as they could be. And that bothered me again. But I'm comparing it to Top Gun Maverick, and my God, this was phenomenal. I mean, it really was that good. And I think, I got to give Tom Cruise some credit. I mean, listen, let's face it, he's maligned a lot. Although, I give him cool points because he spent his 60th birthday watching Formula One racing with his boy Lewis Hamilton, who did really well. So I give Tom Cruise credit on that. But they really did a good job on the effects for this. And I think Top Gun Maverick, if you did not see the first movie, it would stand on its own, although the first movie kind of enlightened you for this.
Sure.
I think whereas I wonder if Avatar, the number 2 Avatar, which is coming out this year, and the number 3, if the two of them will mesh a little more, then, well, again, we don't know where they're going to pick up the story. I mean, that's kind of where it is, because at the end of the first Avatar movie, you saw Sam Worthington's character become a tribes person, and basically his human life form was cut off.
Yep.
And that was part of it. And now I got to ask you this, because I think the one thing that struck me about this, and I kind of, again, I thought, but my God, the ecological implications on this movie, and I was sitting there, I'm thinking strip mining, I'm thinking just global warming and everything. It's just amazing how, and again, this is what I'll say about Avatar. It works well. I mean, it's aged well. I don't think it's like an out of date movie.
No, I mean, the joke for years after it came out was, this movie is just Pocahontas in space, or it's just Fern Gully or Dances with Wolves, but told on another planet. And to an extent, they're not wrong. Like, that's what the story is. It's a very simplistic story. And Cameron's even gone on record saying, like, yeah, there's a very strong environmental issue, stance in this movie. He's like, I'm basically a tree hugger. That's kind of what I want. He has some environmentalist stuff going on. At least he claims to. One thing you can never say about a James Cameron film is that it looks cheap. He has always been one to really push the limits of what technology can do, putting stuff onto film and kind of creating that spectacle, whether it's something as simple as or not simple, but something as interesting as kind of the fluid dynamics and the things that he did in Abyss, and then later on with the liquid metal in Terminator 2. Everything that they did building those sets, and Titanic, whether you like the story of Titanic or not, the visual spectacle of it is second to none. And I think that's also on display in Avatar. Visually, stylistically, it is unreal how good this movie looks, and still looks 13 years later. And
agree wholeheartedly. You hit a point there. And again, while people may have forgotten about this movie or have kind of let it go, the flip around on this is the movie works all this time. It's funny because I really thought the latest James Bond movie,
mhm,
No Time to Die, remember they had filmed that in 2019.
yep,
And I could not believe how that storyline worked so well in 2021. I was just stunned. And the other part of it, let's go to Top Gun Maverick. The Top Gun Maverick, if you in the movie, it was 2020. It was supposed to
yep,
be out in 2020, and they didn't change any of the photography and stuff. The storyline still played well because of the way it was portrayed. And again, they were kind of, well, there's a foreign power that's doing this. It wasn't, the bad guys. It's not the Russians. It's not the, Middle East. It's a bad group. They don't say
yeah,
who. But again, that plays well. I think it worked really well. And again, I think with Avatar, again, the first movie took place in 2156, if I'm not mistaken, reading that. Yes,
yep,
mid 22nd century. So again, even if you move it a couple of years ahead, it'll be curious to see what happens and how the characters develop. Because again, Sam Worthington has a little more experience behind him. Zoe Saldana, of course, we know the trials and tribulations she's been going under lately. Sigourney Weaver. I mean, Sigourney Weaver is you mentioned James Cameron. I mean, how many movies James Cameron movies did she star in? I mean, come on.
yeah.
She's the original Alien.
It was funny because she almost wasn't cast in this because of that. He almost didn't cast her because he didn't want people to be like, oh, it's Sigourney Weaver in another James Cameron film like Aliens. But she was perfect for that role. She's great in this movie. It's funny that you say characters and how they develop going into the sequel, because it would be nice to see characters develop. Because if I have a problem with this movie, I will preach this from the mountaintops all the time. I like plots to be simple, but I want characters to be complex. So give me the simple, like an example of that is, it's going to sound weird to say it this way, but the Ocean's movies, for as convoluted as they can seem,
Yes.
those plots are very simple.
Yes.
It's guy wants to steal something, figures out a way to do it, steals it at the end. But they make all the complexities into the characters and the character interaction. So the actual A to B to C plot progression is pretty simple. To me, that's what makes a movie work. That's what makes storytelling work, is keep your stories simple, make your characters interesting. If I had a problem with this movie, it's that the characters, to me, weren't interesting enough. I feel like the only character that had any sort of an arc whatsoever was Jake Sully, and his arc felt forced. It felt too quick. He went from guy down on his luck and down on his life and stuck in the wheelchair to like, I found my purpose in the span of 96 days is what this movie takes place in. He has 3 months, because they mention that at the beginning of it when the colonel tells him, you got 3 months to get these Na'vi to move, because that's when the dozers get there. And so that, to me, like, that's not enough time to go through what he did and make the changes that he did. But he's the only one that has any changes. The colonel is exactly the same from beginning to end, and that's fine. He's your antagonist, so you can have that. But you've got Giovanni Ribisi's character is a two-dimensional character and doesn't change whatsoever.
I was gonna you, I thought he did evolve a little bit because I think as time went on, as they started to get to become a little more forceful, I think you can tell he's a great actor. By the way, I think he's wonderful, and I thought his character at the end, he was kind of like, I don't know if I like this. I don't like this idea we're going after him.
I mean, he
You understand what I'm saying?
yes, and I think that there's some reluctance from him, but he's still like at the end of the day, he just doesn't care about anything on this planet but getting the MacGuffin, which that's a whole other thing I want to talk about. The actual use of the term unobtainium for the material that they're mining from the planet. Because
I knew you were going to bring that up. I wasn't sure when, but I knew it was going to come up.
I remember sitting in the theater and he picks that rock up and he says, "You see this unobtainium?" And I was and I audibly said to my like, "Really?" I mean, you can't even pretend to give it like a technobabble name. You're just going to go that for me. And again, I like James Cameron, but that felt like a lazy point in the writing where he's just like, who cares? No one's going to care what we call it, right? They're going to be too. It almost feels like it was a hand wave of like, you won't care what we're saying because the visuals are going to take your breath away. And that's where if you're spending as long as he spent making this movie, and from not just the 4 years of production, but he started working on the story supposedly in the mid 90s and spent 10 years just working on the story and kind of letting the technology catch up to where his vision was before he started making it. I feel like you could put some polish on that script and make up a fake name for your substance and do a little bit better than that. But like that sort of, it came down to like the character of, I think it's Selfridge is his name, Giovanni Ribisi's character, who Ribisi is a fine actor. I like him a lot. I've always enjoyed, because he always brings something to roles that he plays. And even his charisma couldn't break through this kind of just stale, like, I'm Bob Evil. I'm the bad corporate overlord. All I care about is money. Like, it was just so blatantly obvious. And Stephen Lang is the same way. Stephen Lang is fantastic. I love seeing him in stuff. He's great in this for the one note that they want him to play, which is angry military guy. But you can't have, like, for me, you can have one of the two of those, right? You can have angry military guy or you can have smarmy corporate guy. But I don't want both of those because it's now there's like nothing for anybody to play off of. And the two of them just become kind of stale to me. So that's where I ended up here. Like I could have taken one or the other. I would prefer Lang in this, the colonel, because with the character of Sully being a Marine who had lost his legs, that to me is a more compelling story. And like mention
relatable for the two.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And there's conflict that can be played within there that they did. But then have either Selfridge like not there at all, and he's just there. They mentioned the company because that felt very Alien universe to me, right? The whole working for the company, and like it felt like there was world building and there was plot points and things that they wanted to get across. So they just sort of like hit the cutting room floor. Stuff that happened back on Earth. There's some mention at one point. Sully says, we have no green left on our planet, and it's like, well, wait, what's going on with that? Have we just strip mined the entire planet and now we're just like a parasite, a virus moving through the galaxy doing the same thing to other planets? Like that kind of got hand waved. Yeah, exactly. But it just kind of got hand waved away. And like, that's the kind of stuff I want to hear at least a little bit about that. Give me some exposition there. I don't need everything laid out for me, but there was that felt like, for as big and as grandiose a movie as this is, there wasn't a lot of like world building, which feels really strange given the visual world building that they did.
But do you think possibly, and I say this because I don't think Cameron envisioned, because as I recall, and if I'm not mistaken, I thought they announced the sequel for it right after the movie had come out when it was so good. They said they're going to do a sequel, but kind of got on the back burner for a while. And I say because I kind of wonder if we're going to see some of that in this movie. what you said,
Hmm.
if we're going to see that backstory sort of, because again, I just kind of, the other part of this movie is, again, runtime. It's a little bit on the longish side. Now, you're right, the visuals are wonderful, but it is longish, and we have become, for lack of a better term, MTV. Like, we have a short attention span.
Hmm.
Movies, if they're longer than 90 minutes, you have to really be sucked in to watch this movie, or else you're going to be sitting there looking at your watch and you're going to be like, how long is this taking? And that's one of the things I kind of wonder with the first movie, if they thought you would get to that point and it was as long as it was. That's part of this, because of this. Titanic is also a long movie.
Yep.
And the fact, and I was looking back at the notes on Wikipedia, and I thought it's kind of interesting what you brought up about the script and stuff. It was nominated for 9 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director. Didn't win. It only won for art, and it won for cinematography. It did not win for any of those. So I think what you bring up is one of the problems with this movie. But again, a popular box office movie never, ever does well at the Oscars. And that's because the Academy Awards favor those artsy movies. They don't favor box office movies.
They do. You're correct there in that the Academy definitely favors a more art house style. However, I wouldn't have voted for this movie for a Best Director or Best Picture, in so much as there's been in the last few years there's been a thing with especially some of the more highfalutin filmmakers, the Martin Scorsese's and stuff, likening certain styles of film, mostly MCU or thus kind of popcorn fare, as like theme park rides, which I don't think is entirely fair because there is story there, but I also I get a little bit of where, like, say, Scorsese's coming from, because he's got a very certain style of film he likes to make, and he's not into comic books, and so he's not going to appreciate that storytelling in the same way. This does feel like it could fit into that mold very, very easily. It's not quite like a full-on. I don't know if you remember old IMAX, like late '90s IMAX stuff where they were literally like theme park rides on a screen. You had the big big glasses.
Yes.
It's not that, but it leans more in that kind of a direction where there was a lot of visual spectacle. There's a lot of protracted scenes of this beautiful landscape that they created for this planet of Pandora, or this, I guess it's a moon probably, but I felt like some of that was done at the expense of storytelling and in that aspects of things, so that like the technical end of things was definitely Oscar worthy. I wouldn't have given a screenwriting Oscar to this because it's very flat and it's very, again, simple plot's fine. Characters were also very simple, and the characters were very cookie cutter, and I felt like there was stuff that would happen and you'd be like, well, wait, why? Like Norm. Okay. Norm as a character is fun. He's the nerdy kind of, the super excited to be there guy that you get. But then there's a point where he's just kind of a dick to Sully for like a third of the movie. And we're supposed to gather all of that from one shot of him looking upset because Sully got chosen by the tribe to learn their ways, and it wasn't Norm. But all we get is a single like 3-second shot of that, and then he's just a jerk to him for a while before eventually coming around. I'm like, well, let's get a little more. Let's develop that relationship some, because up until that point they'd been perfectly friendly, and for him to just do a full 180 on him, while that could be like there was no interaction with Norm and anyone else to be like, it should be me or any of that. Like, that's the kind of stuff where I feel like a script that is just punched up a little bit gives you a little bit more, so you can kind of fill in some of those blanks. Again, it's not bad.
I taking that a step further, I think it's also an indictment, and it's funny because um, I think if you watch a movie from the 60s,
Hmm.
and I use James Bond, the first couple of James Bond movies, even Goldfinger, too. Those movies, there are scenes where it takes some time. They told the story. Gone with the Wind. Wizard of Oz. I'll even say, and we're talking about two of the greatest movies of all time. But again, it's slow in nature, and again, that's part of in my lifetime. I just turned 63. In my lifetime, we've seen this 180 shift. Everything is bang, 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 bang. And that's part of the reason why I think we cry out when we get a movie like a Titanic, let's face it, Titanic, um, Avatar, those movies come along once in a while.
Hmm.
And you want the you sit there and you kind of, oh yeah, I want this movie. I want this movie. When you see it make all the box office, you say, I want it to check all the boxes. The problem is when it doesn't, it disappoints you. But again, part of it also is the nature of movie making. And I think you don't know. I know this is a story. I mean, they talk. This is the 50th anniversary of The Godfather. In
Hmm.
fact, The Godfather just. I live in Savannah, Georgia, and they just played it at a local movie house Friday night on the big screen. And I wanted to go in the worst way because I think I love that movie. And also, they just did the making of miniseries
Oh yeah.
on or a series on Paramount Plus, which was just phenomenal. And of course, also, James Caan just passed away.
Yep.
So there's so much of this. But The Godfather itself, the movie was just such a great movie. But that I don't think you could make a Godfather like that today because it would be done for the MTV generation. Quick, quick, quick. And I really think that's kind of what you have here with Avatar. I think there is a lot of people who are looking forward to this movie. But, again, in terms of sequels, there's always this rule of three a movie and two sequels, or three. First one's great, second one stinks, third one is better. Usually that third movie will be better than the second one. May not make the first one. And I'll use that in terms of Star Wars, except for the first three movies, because one was just universally ripped to shreds. But I think the third one was very good. And again, the first Star Wars, which was four, was wonderful. Two, notch down. Three, up a notch. Again, it's not going to hit that number one. And then seven, eight, and nine, the same thing. Seven, eight, nine.
Yeah, I think it's strange. I would disagree with the rankings of the Star Wars movies, but that's a conversation we could have another day. I think that
Okay.
Empire. I would put Empire as a better story and a better film than A New Hope, but A New Hope is a different experience. And then I put Return of the Jedi below those. Not that it's bad, but I feel like it retreads a lot more of what the first movie did. Whereas the second one was trying to go in a different direction a little bit. Similar to what I think with 7, 8, and 9. I think that 7 tried to kind of play on the nostalgia a little bit, bring you back, say, look, we can do Star Wars still. Star Wars can be good, it can be fun, it can be what you remember it. They gave it over to Rian Johnson, who said, now we're going to go in a totally different direction. Not everything that he chose worked, but I think he asked some interesting questions, and then they backpedaled and tried to retread again a little too far with the ninth movie. But that being what it is, it's interesting the runtime thing and like the MTV generation, because that's a debate that's been going on since probably the early 90s of like everything's getting shorter and attention spans are this and that, and it's true to an extent. And I know some people who will say straight out, if a movie's more than 95 minutes, I don't want to watch it. I don't understand that, because the same person can sit down and binge through 4 episodes of an hour-long drama and sit for the same or for twice that amount of time. But there's something in the breakup, the way that stuff is broken up. So, there's probably a great psychological discussion that could be had over all of that. But for me, what it comes down to, I don't care what the runtime is of something. I want to know what the pacing is of that something. Okay? Avengers Endgame is 3 hours long, but I enjoy watching it because the pacing is great. The example I like to give is The Green Mile. When that came out in 1998, that movie is 3 hours long. I walked out of the theater after watching that not feeling like I'd sat there for 3 hours at all. The pacing of that movie was so good, and the story unfolded in a way that it never felt like it dragged at any point, and it is a solid 3 hours long. This movie, Avatar, is 2 hours and 42 minutes, which is a little shorter. Titanic was just a tick over 3 hours. And Cameron, I mean, with the exception of The Terminator, doesn't like to make short movies. That was his shortest movie at an hour 47 minutes, which I'll tell you, that movie at 2+ hours would not have worked at all. That particular movie. Now, Terminator 2, that was 2 hours and almost 2 hours and 20 minutes. And that worked because it was a different story structure, and he was able to stretch some things out, and it was okay. But again, he paced it well. He figured out where to throw the action sequences, where to put things. This one, to me, the pacing was fine, but I do feel like on repeated viewings, some of the sequences do feel stretched out, like the flying, especially when he first starts flying. That just goes on. It keeps going.
Okay, but I think one of the again, the clip you played going into this, I think, kind of sets that up because of what it meant to your central character,
Mm-hmm.
who's a paraplegic. This is his dream, and to be able to fly. I understand what you're saying about the flying sequences are extended, but it works for me. I think it's okay. And it's funny when you say that about movies because Forrest Gump, I want to say Forrest Gump was a 2+ hour movie. I think 2.5 to the almost. And the thing about Forrest Gump was I thought it was great. And Tom Hanks was wonderful in that movie. There are some movies that I can't wait for them to finish,
Mm-hmm.
but I think you're right about listen, a good movie that is well paced and keeps your attention is one that you're not going to walk out of the theater and say, "Oh my God!" And you just mentioned Avengers Endgame. I just sat and watched it again on Disney Plus,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw it in the theaters. I saw it. I think that movie is so good, and the scenes that get you are at the end when it is they really take their time on it, and I thought they did a wonderful job. Now, granted, I'm not a huge Avengers MCU guy, but I thought that movie it worked, and I always thought Endgame was wonderful.
Oh, absolutely.
I think what was so interesting and what was so funny is Josh Brolin was in that movie, in Deadpool, and there was, I think, one other movie he was in. And he was in all these movies back to back. They all shot him at different times, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but he was so good in all of them.
Oh, yeah. He was
And again,
fantastic.
he's a great actor. He was in Men in Black 3. He was wonderful. But again, he's a good actor.
Mm-hmm.
You asked right off the bat, Sam Worthington, about him as the lead. Again, I don't help me on this one. I haven't looked it up, but has he done anything other than Avatar since then?
He's done a few things here and there. He was in the Terminator Salvation with Christian Bale. That would have been after Avatar. He did the follow-up of Clash of the Titans with Wrath of the Titans, which would have been after this. I think Clash was right around the time of this. My thing with Sam Worthington isn't that, like, first of all, I'm sure he's a fine person. I haven't heard anything bad about him in that way. I don't think his acting is bad. I do question why so many movies, because I'd seen him in a few things, seem to want to make him do an American accent, and especially at this time, his American accent just wasn't consistent. He even said in, I was reading some trivia, that he had less trouble learning the Na'vi language for this movie than he did trying to perfect his American accent. But you know, that is kind of neither here nor there. I feel like he's wooden a little bit. There is a certain thing called the neutral mask in film, which is the characters, especially in an action movie, where the main character is almost a neutral mask. He doesn't have a ton of his own personality. Most of that personality goes into the villain characters. That way, the audience can slide themselves into the shoes and project themselves into the character of this. Keanu Reeves was really good at that in like the Matrix movies, for instance, of playing that part where you can you almost can feel yourself as Neo through his performance with the way that he's giving it. And I feel like they kind of sort of were going for that a little bit with Sam Worthington, but he just doesn't have. He's missing something in this movie that makes me believe his progression. And I don't know if it's because it felt like it took place over too short a period of time for the character to really make that change, or it never felt like the version of Jake Sully that was in the wheelchair talking to the military about how to take down the big tree if they need to was any different from the version of Jake Sully who was in his avatar talking to the Na'vi people. Like, I didn't feel like there was a evolution of him that felt like it wasn't just written out that was going to happen for him. Like, his actual performance didn't feel as though it evolved to me.
Okay, but I think part of it also is the fact that you're dealing with he's disembodied from the Na'vi.
Mhm.
He's disembodied from that character. It's an avatar, and I think I think you're judging, or we're trying to judge him on a normal role, and I think that this is a different role for him. You look at what he has to do, and again, it's kind of like you're in a you're remote way, and you're trying to react and do all this stuff, and you're not there. And I think that woodenness, I think, is part of the character because his body, it's an avatar. Again, I keep using that avatar word because he is an avatar. The difference is, I think Sigourney Weaver has such experience that it made her a better actress, and she was able to pull it off better. Does that make sense?
I mean, I can kind of see that, but we're also, in terms of like the context of the movie, we're also kind of led to believe that he just sort of naturally takes to this, because here you have, I mean, look, obviously we've got to throw logic brain out the window for this movie to work at all, but even more so when you have the trope of like, oh, he had a twin brother who was part of the program who was the scientist. He literally knows nothing about this program, yet he can work the avatar perfectly the first try with no problems whatsoever. So we sort of have this idea that like he's just naturally good at that, and he's naturally gifted to that point. But you mentioned Sigourney Weaver, and she was great in that she embodied the character she was playing, and I felt and believed in her. I felt and believed in Norm. It's just something with Sam's performance in this. Again, he's not bad, and I do feel like he's come a long way. And I'm curious to see what he does in these sequels, because I would like to see sort of his progression as an actor. But he's been steadily working. Like he was in Hacksaw Ridge in 2016. He was in a TV series called Manhunt. Actually did some voice work in Black Ops 4, Call of Duty Black Ops 4, which I did not know.
Okay.
So he's kept working. But I want to see. Oh, he's done. Okay, the character of Alex Mason in the Black Ops games, I guess, was his. So that one fits. But I would just like to see. I would like to see his progression as an actor, because I read after. Obviously, I saw this in theater and then saw it again for the show. And afterwards, I was reading, the whole IMDb thing of like, this actor and this actor were also thought of for the role. And 9 times out of 10, I throw those out the window because it's always Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Like any movie produced from 1982 to like 1998 will have Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone were up for the role of whomever in IMDb. But the two names they mentioned were Jake Gyllenhaal and Matt Damon. And
Yes.
I could, like, I'm picturing Matt Damon in 2009 playing the character of Jake Sully, and something about that, there's an emotional component that I think either one of them could bring, really. Gyllenhaal too. Gyllenhaal, I feel like, got kind of underrated as an actor earlier in his career, and since like 09, 10, he's like End of Watch was kind of that first movie where he sort of impressed me with his like overall acting ability, and it just kept getting better. But I feel like there's something emotionally that they can bring that's what I think I was missing with Sam Worthington. Was there was this like emotional, almost like an emotional uncanny valley, right? Like, instead of missing that sort of, it was missing that humanity. There was just something there, and maybe it was by design. I don't know. It just didn't quite land for me. And so I want to see him in this sequel, and I'm hoping that that he will, his growth as an actor will translate to screen. Because also, let's be honest, part of it is it's difficult to act the way they had to for most of this movie with a rig on your face and the motion capture dots and doing all of that stuff. It's not easy to be Andy Serkis and just do Oscar-worthy performances while wearing that gear.
And you're talking about Sam Worthington, and I'm just looking at the info on it, and this was the first major role for him. And I think that there's, again, your first major role is this monster movie, this once in a lifetime movie.
Mhm.
And so where do you go? Where do you go from here? What else are you going to do from here?
Yeah.
And again, I think if you're looking at who he's going up against, Stephen Lang, well, I mean, he's done a lot of great movies. Sigourney Weaver, hello,
Yeah.
I mean, Michelle Rodriguez, hello. Yeah, that's where I'm going with. The only one who he kind of is on equal with, I want to say is Joel David Moore, because I'm watching the movie and I go, oh yeah, what's his name from Dodgeball? And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I know him. That was, but again, what else have you seen from him? And I kept waiting for that to come through. But still, I think you it's so difficult to start or to have this type of movie as your first major role, and then everything is going to be judged against it. And again, I think I'll be curious to see. Maybe you're right. I want to see how he's developed and how he's developed as an actor in this role, because again, he's going to be there with the same people as before. So you'll get a chance. You kind of judge yourself when you're in sports or anything. You judge yourself against like people and how you
Mhm.
do. I think it's interesting to see how he does this time round. And what you say is true. You don't hear of any of this. He's got a big head. He thinks he's better than he really is. And so again, I think it'll be interesting to see how that develops. But again, you have a right to question it, and I think you're right on that. But I just think it's tough to really sit there and critique him on his first go round. Again, after this, then I think you have a point here in saying, if he does another bad job, in your mind, you say, I don't know about Sam Worthington.
Yeah, and again,
It looks legitimate.
there's nothing wrong with Sam Worthington. He had been acting. This was his first big role, but he had been acting for 8 or 9 years at this point when he made this movie. He started, his first credits are back, being on Jag in 2000 TV series, and doing a few movies here and there. But to flip the script on you a little bit is think of another James Cameron film and somebody who was getting into their first acting bit, and that's Edward Furlong in Terminator 2. Here's a kid who whose voice literally changed while making the movie, so much so that they had to go back and re-record some of his dialogue because his voice had dropped halfway through the movie. But there was something with his performance and his emotional connection playing off of Linda Hamilton, playing off of Arnold, where you can see that acting ability in him at such a young age. And I feel like that there was something just missing there. And I don't know if it's the disconnect of you got to act on a soundstage surrounded by green screen and there isn't actual things there for you to act off of, whether it's the creature effects or if you're standing around acting with a bunch of people in spandex suits covered in ping pong balls. That's a totally different type of acting, and it's not going to be easy. And so to do that early on in your career, again, I want to see Sam Worthington and how he's progressed, because after this, he did Clash of the Titans, which he was okay in it, but I had some more issues with that movie as a storytelling thing as well. That movie bothered me because the original Clash of the Titans with Harry Hamlin, Perseus goes on his quest because of his love for Andromeda, and in the remake, Perseus goes on his quest because of his hatred of the gods. And I'm like, that's a completely different storytelling angle, and I didn't like it as much. Like, the more I thought about it, the more I didn't like that. But he had done that. He did Terminator Salvation. So he did a few things. I just want to see, now I want to see, because I haven't seen him in a few years, I want to see how he does coming back to something like this. Because this world of Pandora and this idea of Avatar, there's a lot there that you could explore. And I think what ended up being my major gripe with the movie, and why it's not something that I just fawn over and want to watch over and over, is kind of the untapped potential of that. And it's like the story, what you gave us on screen feels like it was only 2/3 of what we should have gotten. Like, we should have gotten a little bit more, like maybe trim, because not only is the flying scene that I mentioned kind of long, but there are several other scenes that just feel like it's protracted establishing shots of like, look at the cool thing we made. Look at the cool floating mountains. Like, yeah, that's great. But we don't need 4 minutes of them flying through the floating mountains. We don't need the first time they as avatars go into the jungle and drop down. Like, that scene keeps going and going and going, and then we have the action sequence where he's getting chased by the whatever tiger-like creature. That seems to go on for probably longer than it needed to, after having the stare down with the big hammerhead rhino. And it's like, let's trim some of that and let's give our characters some more work. And so my hope is that maybe Cameron will do a little bit more of that now that he has created the spectacle and he's given us all this amazing stuff to look at. Now take that and incorporate it into your story and refine your story and your characters and give us something really good that the pacing feels a little bit better on. Because I admit that is my opinion on it, and it doesn't necessarily have to. It's not the correct opinion or any better than anyone else's. And I don't think that this is a bad movie. I enjoyed watching it again, but I did notice the pacing of it. This felt like 2 hours and 45 minutes, as opposed to feeling like something that's just moving along and keeping my attention the whole time.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because one of the things I was just looking up, and I wanted to say, I thought I had remembered this. They had released, when it did take over first place again in terms of top grossing movie of all time.
Yep.
It was a special re-release, and it was re-edited, and that's and again, that's what I wanted to see if they had done that, because I mean, I'm a movie buff, and I get the biggest kick out of getting Blu-ray movies because I like the director or the special soundtrack where they talk about the movie.
Oh yeah.
Or also the cutscenes, and I just, that's what I find so fascinating. And I think, I, wouldn't mind seeing this for this movie. I think, I, I mean, I'm a movie buff, and I get the biggest kick out of getting Blu-ray movies because I like the director or the special soundtrack where they talk about the movie. Oh yeah. The cutscenes, the cutscenes, and I just, that's what I find so fascinating. And I think, I wouldn't mind seeing this just because I'd like to hear some things. But again, anytime I get I get a movie, because I will always there I won't buy a lot of movies, but like, and I'll use the James Bond movie as an example, No Time to Die. Bought it as soon as it came out, pulled it out, and I looked at the deleted scenes and the recuts and how they redid it and stuff. And I just find that stuff fascinating. And by the way, one of my favorite Blu-ray releases is Christmas Vacation, because the audio channel was the director, Johnny Galecki, um, I think Randy Quaid did it,
Okay.
and Miriam Flynn and Beverly D'Angelo. And I got to tell you, it was so entertaining to listen to and to find out the backstory. And the best one I think about it is they're talking about the scene when they're up in the mountains when they're shooting the riding the saucer.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And Beverly just said, "Oh yeah, I was back. I didn't have to be at that. So I was back in the hotel emptying the minibar."
Yep.
And then the other part of it is, and the other part of that, and I don't mean to protract on this, but the scene where they turn the lights on in front of Clark's house,
Hmm.
Johnny Galecki could not be in that scene because it was shot so late at night. So you don't see him hugging his father. And I'm like, oh my God, I never noticed that.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that I just eat up and I think is so great. So I guess maybe I need to look at that for this Avatar to see some more of that stuff.
It would be fascinating because I'm with you. I love behind the scenes. I love seeing. I've done films, and I've made some projects when I was a kid, and I've done a little bit as an adult. Uh, and I'm talking like cable access level stuff. But I know enough, and I had friends that went to film school, so I got to go on to movie sets with them and stuff like that. So I'm always fascinated by the background, and I love listening to directors talk shop and talk about their craft. I love Brad Pitt and David Fincher on the commentary track for Fight Club is fantastic because it's a great combination of like talking about making the movie and then ribbing each other at the same time. Brad Pitt making fun of like, yeah, this was a really dark scene, and David Fincher kind of going off for 30-40 seconds about the tone of the scene, and then Pitt's like, no, I mean, like, we're horribly underlit in this scene. You can't see anything. It's too dark. Like that kind of stuff. I love like background stories are great because he's difficult to work with. The stories of making Aliens. If you ever watch, and I talk about it a lot on the show, but the Netflix series, The Movies That Made Us, they have an entire one on aliens and making it, and some of the stuff that happened while they were making that movie is incredible. Like his clashes with the production department in England while making that movie are legendary. This apparently the rumor, no, this is rumor, so who knows how true this is that in making Avatar, he kept a nail gun on set, and if somebody's cell phone went off, he would take the phone and nail it to a wall. I don't know if that actually happened, but given other stories I've heard of James Cameron, I wouldn't put it past him to do. To just be like, give me the phone and just staple it to a wall and move on.
Well, again, that's the type of thing. Listen, that's the type of thing. There is a quirkiness to directors. One of Liam Neeson's early roles was in the movie The Deadpool.
Yep.
With Dirty Harry movie, and I just recently watched that, and he was playing this director who was a little over the top. He was a B movie director, but I got a kick out of that, and it was enjoyable to see some of this stuff and how they did it and how the craft type of thing and stuff like that. So I agree with you. Cameron is in and of itself, because of his success and because of what he's been able to do, can take his time. He can do what he wants to. Now,
Oh yeah.
the other thing about James Cameron, though, I want to say this, is I get the feeling sometimes he's not a very happy man. And I say this because, well, let's see. I think he's on his fourth marriage or fifth marriage. And that tends, I mean, I'm not trying to be the Acme Judgment Company here, but, you know, his longest marriage, I think, has been 5 years, 6 years. That indicates you're not a happy person,
He's
you know,
also
and
Yeah, he also comes across as somebody who's very dedicated to his craft, and I think that
okay.
when it comes to relationships, I think that can make it really difficult. I mean, he's whether he takes a long time in between his movies, but he's working on stuff during all of that. Between Titanic and Avatar, he was doing documentaries about the Titanic and about deep sea diving, and I think after Avatar, he did a few things where he went to South America and visited with like some of the tribes down there. I don't know exactly, but like he does stuff in between his movies as well as just pouring himself into the minutia of filmmaking and the technical aspects of it. So I think that can make it difficult sometimes to be around because he's singularly focused, and that's why I can believe that he would nail people's phones to a wall on his movie set if it rang while he was trying to do something, because it just feels like the type of thing that he would do because he's so laser focused on, I'm going to make this thing and I'm going to do it well and I'm going to do it my way and you're going to follow in the way that I want to make this.
But something you mentioned cell phones, and I think cell phones there's a positive and there's a negative about them. How many times do you hear about a Broadway actor or actress stopping when a phone rings and's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? You're supposed to turn your phone off." And so I think in some way he's railing against modern society because listen, what really ticks me off as a person, as a pet peeve, I don't want to hear a conversation. All right, I got to hear your side because you're somewhere and you have this cell phone,
Mm-hmm.
but then you put it on speaker. I don't want to hear both sides. And I perfectly go to the store at like 8 o'clock in the morning
Mm-hmm.
when there's nobody there.
Oh,
And
sure.
yet I got to hear these phone calls all
Yeah.
over the store. Like I really care. So in that aspect, I think James Cameron is, listen, I think he wants a certain decorum on set. Uh, he's got a right to do that. He's a professional. You expect him to give you his utmost attention. And as an actor or actress, you give him that. And if you work on his thing, you do your job. So that I can see that. And again, that's what makes, there are good directors, there are great directors. And I think James Cameron is a great director because of what he what he puts into it. You're right. He gives of himself. He puts a lot in of himself. He's a technical director too. When I say technical, he works his craft,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what makes James Cameron great. And again, the proof is in the pudding. Look at the top 10 highest rated, highest grossing movies of all time. Cameron's the only one that's on there multiple times.
Yeah, he look as far as like technical acumen and filmmaking, there are few that can rival Cameron. I feel like there's a balance point between that and storytelling. And it's something where like it's the same thing I have with like say Christopher Nolan. I think Christopher Nolan is very similar to James Cameron in that he is very particular about the type of movie that he wants to make. He's going to make that movie, and there's going to be technical aspects of Nolan's films that are second to none. That just you cannot you are beyond reproach. And I think Cameron is the same way. Cameron makes things that are interesting to look at. My only issue with Avatar was that I feel like for as long as it took to make, he could have maybe collaborated with somebody and worked the script a little bit more. But again, some of that is his own work style, and to an extent, I'm sure there's some ego in play as well. And it's his movie, it's his script. He's going to do that, which is fine, and he's earned that right. After Terminator, and then he goes on and he does Aliens. By that point, he had earned his right to do this, and he continues to do it, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. I am going to see the Avatar sequels because it's good. The movie to me was good enough that I want to know more about what's going on.
Yes, and you know, part of that also, I want to take that a step further, is maybe what you say, or the fact that Avatar, while widely accepted to be this wonderful movie, you know, again, nominated for 9 awards, only winning three in the Oscars.
Mhm.
Okay, that's a 33%, you know, or 30% rate success rate. Um, I wonder maybe if he got that message in a subtle way. I'm not saying he did, but it'll be curious to see. Again, I go to the threes, the law of threes in terms of sequel, original and two sequels. I kind of wonder if he breaks the mold this time. And maybe number two is, as you said, The Empire Strikes Back, better than New Hope. But, you know, again, New Hope was such a groundbreaking movie in the Star Wars realm.
Mhm.
The second one was, you know, again, I didn't like it as well as I liked the third one. That's just me, though. I mean, again, everybody will argue this. They have their favorites and stuff like that. I wonder if perhaps Cameron will take this. And again, it's going to be interesting. And you know, the other part of this, and I think, you know, I don't want to digress into this for a long time, but you know, coming off the pandemic, Hollywood really needs to establish themselves and reestablish themselves. And it seems like they're starting down that road. But the problem is, we've now hit a point in the summer movie season.
Mhm.
Okay, I saw Top Gun, wanted to see it. I saw Jurassic World, wanted to see it. Saw the Elvis movie, wanted to see it. Okay, what's
Yeah.
next? What's next? What am I getting? Is the next movie I'm going to go see Avatar? I don't think so. But that's part of this. Is I think they've got to start finding their mojo again, because now, again, part of it is, you know, Lightyear caught some heat. I mean, I thought that would be one I wanted to see, but Lightyear caught some heat, and I was like, okay, I'll wait till it's on Disney Plus, because it's going to be on Disney Plus very soon. And too many people, I think, are taking that. So you kind of wonder, is Hollywood going to go back and start making these movies that's going to draw you into a theater? Because otherwise, you sit at home where you've been for the last 2 years. I just, that's kind of what I'm thinking right now.
Yeah, there's a whole change happening in in the world of entertainment and how we consume entertainment, and it's been a gradual change over the last, I would say, 15 to 20 years. Which again, it's another conversation that we could spend probably hours on, with the proliferation of streaming services and moving away from a network television model, to more streaming service based stuff. You're seeing far fewer brand new shows on network television. It's more retreads of old stuff, or relaunching properties that they already have the rights to. You're seeing more stuff go direct to streaming. Film is going to take long, has taken longer, and it will continue to take longer to get there. But I do think we're seeing a change to where theater going is not going to be the only way to experience new movies, and it won't just be something is theatrically released or it's crap sent straight to DVD, straight to video. We'll kind of see a mixture, and there will be a change in terms of like the days of the 12, 14, 18 screen multiplex. I feel like are more and more numbered, and I don't know that that's necessarily a good or a bad thing. I think it's just what's going to happen. With the way that it's easier to watch things at home now, with the way that it's easier to consume what you want when you want, we're seeing the change. And it's not, what the thing about it is, it's not something that you or I are going to experience in the same way, because we didn't grow up with that. I grew up in movie theaters, going to theaters when I was in my teens.
So did I. Yes.
Starting off in theaters with my family, and then going as a teen, and then going in my 20s and all of that. That to me is a different experience than somebody who is 12, 13, 14 right now, who has spent the last couple of years without that as a regular thing, didn't have it prior to that. The changes are happening. I know people that are in their early 20s now that are just like, I don't care about going to see a movie in a theater. I got a big TV at home. I can sit at home and watch it, and I'm fine with that because they didn't grow up with that. It's like appointment viewing when it comes to television. I do a podcast on classic TV where we talk
Hmm.
about, seeing these shows. Like, I remember watching Alf, and you watched Alf on whatever Thursday night at 8 o'clock because that's when it was on.
Hmm.
And maybe if you were
Hmm.
lucky, it was a show that was on long enough to get reruns. Younger people that didn't grow up with that and grew up with streaming services, now they can just watch what they want when they do.
I got to tell you a story about this, and this is, I always tell this story. I grew up in the 60s and 70s when Saturday morning was the only time you got cartoons on network TV.
Yep.
And one of the shows I remember from my youth was Scooby Doo. Well, my daughter would watch Scooby Doo on Cartoon Network, and it repeated. And I had to explain to her. I said, Stephanie, you have to understand something. Back in the 60s and 70s, you only saw these shows once a week, and they would make 26 episodes, and they would repeat them once a year. So after you get those 26 episodes, the Scooby-Doo is interesting because the first two seasons were that 26 episodes they did. So they ran on CBS 4 times. Then they ran another 26 episodes of them. Well, she's watching them on Cartoon Network. They're on once a day. I said, honey, think about this. 26 episodes is going to be done in 4 weeks.
Yep.
5 times a day, 4 weeks. And I said, they did not make these shows for you to watch all the time. I said, that's what's so different about nowadays. And again, you know, I remember when we got to watch Wizard of Oz once a year.
Oh yeah.
Once a year was on network TV. Same thing with Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. You watched it every year. Then videotape came in the 80s. You could watch it anytime. My daughter was watching Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer during 100-degree days in the summertime.
Sure.
It's amazing how things have changed. And your comment on that, I think, is valid. But I was going to take it a step further. If you want to go to the movies, you want a premium experience. And this is the fight I'm having where, again, I live in Savannah, Georgia. Now, in Savannah, Georgia, we have AMC in 2 multiplexes. Okay. They are the worst theaters I've ever been in my life. And I can get away with saying this because I'm not saying something I have not tweeted mucho times to the guest relations folks at AMC. They are the worst theaters I've ever been in my life. Okay. The thing of it is that I got to a point where I got out of going, I used to drive 45 minutes to an hour to go to a theater with reclining seats in New Jersey because I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest theater. And I did that. And where I'm going with this is now here in Savannah, we have a new theater that has reclining seats and all that stuff. I got to tell you something. It's wonderful.
Oh yeah.
But you flip it around, those AMC theaters are still there. Now, do we go to the AMC theaters? I'll tell you, we went to the theater last December and they had no popcorn, no candy. What movie theater is going to open without any of those two things? Because they ain't making money on the tickets. So, and I'll always remember that. But that tells you something about those theaters. You want the premium experience. You want the reclining seat. You want the big popcorn bucket. You want the endless soda. That's what you're going to do. I think that's where it's going. I don't think we're going to see the end of multiplexes, but you're going to see people want experiences. And I agree with you that a lot of people, the experience of the big screen and the sound bar, the sound system is great. But still, to see a movie, I'm so glad I went and saw Top Gun in IMAX. And
Oh
the reason I
sure.
say that is because, oh my God, it was such a wonderful experience. I saw Jurassic World Dominion in that IMAX theater. The same IMAX, by the way, the world's tallest IMAX theater is located in Pooler, Georgia. Yes, indeed. And I saw it there. I got to tell you, I was not as impressed with the IMAX for that. But having said that, and you still pay more for IMAX, but it's something that you'll do because you want this premium experience.
Hmm.
And I think you'll still have that. But I think you're going to see big changes in addition to what you mentioned about streaming and stuff and television and appointment viewing. We're going to see a big change in how we get television because I think streaming is the way it's going to go, and your local TV affiliate is going to go bye bye.
Oh sure. That's been happening for the last 10 years. Um, I think that part of it too is that there are certain movies that beg to be experienced that way. Top Gun Maverick is one. This movie, honestly, Avatar was a movie that was a completely different experience seeing it in a big screen with that sound system. Dune was a movie that was like that for me.
Hmm.
I watched
Hmm.
it both at home, and I have the home version of it that I watched was on a large projected TV with a good sound system. Still wasn't the same as sitting in the theater watching that movie. It's just there's changes happening, and I'm just really interested to see where they go because a lot of us are resistant to that change, and a lot of the industry is resistant to that change because they want to keep making money the way that they have, and the ones that are going to survive it are going to be the companies and the filmmakers and the creators that are willing to and interested in adapting and pivoting and changing things. The creators that are not afraid to do something that will come out on a streaming service first and maybe get into a theater. Some movies, like there was the whole lawsuit with Scarlett Johansson and Disney over Black Widow. A lot of that was
Yes.
because of contracts that were already in place. If that movie
Right.
hadn't been started until closer to the pandemic or during it or something, things would have changed. That's a reason why we waited so long to get Top Gun Maverick was because of the contracts that were in place. But you look at something like a Stranger Things that can continue to do what they're doing. They're making feature-length film episodes. The final episode of season 4 of Stranger Things is 2.5 hours long because that's what they needed to tell their story, and it worked, and it looks good. It looked like something you could go and see in a theater. So we're seeing that stuff start to change and that money start to move around. I'm curious to see where it goes. But I'm also very, very interested to see what somebody like a Cameron, who started in film and was one of the early pioneers of doing digital and all digital filmmaking. And he's always been somebody that's kind of sat on the leading edge, but that leading edge gets further and further away the older that you get because it just takes longer to adapt to new things. So I'm curious to see what he does with these next 4 movies, because if he's making 2 movies back to back, let's say Avatar 2 comes out this year and, adjusting for what the theater landscape is like now, completely bombs and just doesn't do well. Well, what happens with 3 now? How is that going to go? Is he going to just force that to be done the same way, or is he going to try and leverage getting something into a streaming situation earlier, or how? I don't know. I don't know how it's going to go, but I'm very curious to know because I do think Cameron is a compelling artist and a compelling director, and I like to see what he does. I just want to see kind of some more. Like I feel like his storytelling was getting better and better and better, and it was almost a step back from Titanic to Avatar in terms of telling a story, showing
Oh,
a
okay.
story. I think he continues to get better, but I feel like telling that story in a compelling manner took a step back when it came to Avatar.
But the thing I'm going to say about this is if you look at what is, and you talk about the theater landscape and stuff like this, let's be realistic. Titanic, or excuse me, Avatar 2 is not going to do as well as the first Avatar because of 2 reasons. Number one, I think it is a movie that people will want to go to the theater for. There are certain
Oh,
movies that
sure.
people will want to go see that big screen. And
Hmm.
again, part of it is nostalgia. And the nostalgia is you wanted to see, Top Gun on the big screen, you wanted to see it. And again, it took 35 years, but it was well worth the wait. And it was wonderful. Okay. That having been said, I think Avatar will also get you into the theater. The question is going to be, are they I think they think of this as a 2-act sequel. So I don't know if the second one bombs, whether the third one they'll change anything for. I think you're locked into these next 2 movies. I kind of wonder if you would see the shift for the latter 2 movies. Because remember, go
Most
back
likely.
to but go back to Star Wars. Remember Star Wars originally in 82, if I recall, they said, oh, they can envision this going 9 episodes. I think you said 9 episodes, and this was the middle part of it. So when Lucas finally went back and did those first three, and he said, "I've had enough. I'm not going to do this anymore." And that was, and so you're like, okay. But then Disney comes along and they say, okay, let's go and let's do Star Wars. And then they ended up doing it the original length. And now you've had all the spin-offs and stuff like that. I mean, they're taking it in different directions. The point I make is Avatar, I think you've kind of got a set path for the next two movies. So I don't think you're going to change anything for that because again, it's within 2 years. To have meaningful change in terms of marketing and stuff, you got to look 4 or 5 years down the road. And again, I think it won't be these next two movies, but again, if Cameron changes or if the studio changes, it's going to come in the other ones. And that's why you'll notice again, we keep going back to James Bond. The James Bond movies now, they're going to reboot the entire franchise, and that's because you've gotten to a certain point. And that's what Hollywood, for better or for worse, that's what they're doing now. And part of it is because again, people don't want to take a chance on a new movie. When was the last movie that you went out there and you said, okay, here's a new different type of thing? And it's because
Well, I can tell you
there
what one it
has
was for me, but it was just earlier this
go
year.
ahead.
It was Everything Everywhere
Go
All at
ahead.
Once.
Okay.
Everything Everywhere All at Once. If you have not seen that movie, it is probably, for what I have watched so far in 2022, the best film I've seen this year. And I've
Okay.
seen Dune. I guess that was 2021, maybe. But I've seen a lot of stuff this year. That movie blew them all away, and it's not based on anything. It's a completely original story. It doesn't. There's a thing with filmmaking, which is filmmakers want to take some risks and want to tell different stories. Studios don't. Studios want a bankable movie, and bankability comes with nostalgia, and it comes with familiarity, and that's why we've got 20-something James Bond movies, and they only wrote, I think, it was License to Kill was the last one that was based on a novel.
Hmm. Yeah.
With the exception of Casino
Yeah.
Royale, but Casino Royale was a reboot, starting the franchise over essentially at that
Well,
point in
Casino Royale was the
2006.
first Bond movie done in 1954, and then also it was of course the non-Bond movie that was done in 67.
Right.
Um, but again, I understand what you're saying. But you see what I'm talking about. You're right. They want what's tried and true, and they want to make money on it. That's why, by the way, that's why if you have not, and you do have Paramount Plus, you've got to watch The Offer because oh my God, it's just so enlightening. And you talk about the movie marketing. I didn't realize that The Godfather changed movie marketing. And I didn't realize that because it used to be you'd premiere in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles,
Mm-hmm.
three theaters, and then you'd send it out into the country if it was a hit.
Well, because
But
you would premiere there, and the people from the different markets would send their people. They would watch it. They would decide if they wanted to buy it, and then show it in their theaters. And there was a whole industry of guys whose job it was to go watch a movie and decide if they wanted to buy it and bring it to their theater. Um, and that
that's
completely
what I'm saying is
changed.
the Godfather changed that, and
Hmm.
that's why we've seen this over the years. And I think now you're going to see a seminal shift in this. But again, I go back to I'm still going to think I want the experience. I want that movie theater experience. I think one of my biggest disappointments was, and again, and talk about movies, I went and saw Snakes on a Plane. I
Hmm.
went and saw that movie, an afternoon matinee with three people in the theater.
Sure.
And when Samuel L. Jackson utters the line, I lost it. I was in hysterics,
Hmm.
and that was it. Because the other two people were like, "Huh?" And I'm like, "That's a movie that just cried out. You had to see it with other people.
Oh,
You had
sure.
to see it in a theater. Just packed." Because you would have just been raucous and But having said that, I think that that's what movie. And you know something? Listen, you can say a lot of things. Tom, you can take a lot of shots at. I mean,
Hmm.
let's be realistic. But I got to tell you, I thought that opening to Top Gun was so good. Top Gun Maverick, by the way,
Yep.
was so good with him because I think it reached out to the people in the theater. They have been waiting for this movie for a while. He did it, and I didn't sit there and go, "Oh, Tom Cruise is being disingenuous." I thought that was Tom Cruise being Tom Cruise,
Oh,
and
sure.
he's passionate about movies. He's
Yeah.
passionate about the big screen. And he's passionate about this project, just as he's passionate about, Mission Impossible. Again, we could talk about the fact that Tom Cruise, how many years has he got left? And, we haven't talked about the Avatar and the sequel is the fact that these characters or these people, actors and actresses, have aged more than 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
I mean,
Sigourney Weaver is now I mean, even with makeup, I think it's going to be tough to portray her um as she
well,
was in the original Avatar.
she's
Avatar.
not playing that same character though. She's going to be playing the teenage
Okay.
daughter of Sam Worthington and Zoe Saldana's characters.
Okay.
She's playing a full. She's voicing, and I think maybe mocapping, but doing a completely CG character.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm really interested in it. I'm just always interested in kind of where industry is going and where entertainment is changing because I can see both sides of it. I can understand when Christopher Nolan says, "Look, I'm making this movie and I want it to be seen in a big screen." And he's an artist and it's his art piece and that's how he wants it showcased. However, that only goes so far. Like as a painter, if you are painting and you want your stuff shown in a gallery, that's fantastic. You should have the opportunity to do that, but you can't force everyone to see it in that location either. And I think that for film and television, the change that's being made is becoming more accessible for other people. Whether it's people that can't get out to theaters, don't like being out in a theater with a bunch of people. They can't enjoy something because their anxiety is just too high to sit in a theater full of people. Whether it's because of what's happened over the last couple of years or before that. I had friends of mine that didn't like going to the movies growing up because they just didn't like being in a room full of that many people. I get that. That's fine. They're more comfortable watching it at home. I think that you should have the option for either. I think that I don't want theaters to go away because I do think that experience is something different. My experience of seeing the movie Serenity in a theater is something that I will never forget because of what it was like to sit in that theater with that crowd and watch that movie opening night. But I also think that that coming up with different ways to put art out there, to put film out there, is great, and I want to see it all be viable. And studios need to be able to adjust either expectations or ways in which they are going to fund films. Because for a long time it was an actor would do the big budget film so that they could fund their smaller art house film that they wanted to make. Michael Caine does Jaws: The Revenge, so he can buy a house and help finance the smaller movie that he wants to make. He can take that money and funnel it into that. So I think there's still a place for that. Tentpole movies aren't going away. Big blockbuster stuff obviously isn't going away with the way Spider-Man No Way Home made money this year, with the way Top Gun has made money. So I think that it's all there. I think that it's all very viable and very good. I'm always fascinated by how it goes and how it changes and what changes. And television has been the one that's been kind of the litmus test for me, and seeing how, growing up when X-Files was hitting the airwaves and appointment viewing, and every Friday night, I think it was, or whatever night of the week it was that X-Files was on, you were there to watch it. And seeing all these shows and then seeing the evolution of it to now, my former stepson had no idea what that was like, waiting around until a Thursday night at 9:00 to watch a show, because he could watch whatever show it was whenever it came out. And we see a little bit of the back and forth with like Mandalorian or Book of Boba Fett and some of the stuff that Disney's putting out on Disney Plus, where they're putting them out an episode a week. It's still, you can watch it whenever you want, but you have to wait till that day that it comes out. Or some people will just be like, I'm just going to wait 6 weeks and then I'll watch them all at once. Either one of those works.
Apple TV is doing that too, with For All Mankind and there's Ted Lasso. I mean, again, you're right. It's once a week, but it is a change, and you're right about how in our lifetime, we've seen that change. The appointment TV, Thursday night must see TV. I
Hmm.
mean, that's going to strike a chord with somebody who's
Oh,
who's
sure.
who's listening or watching us, because that wasn't that long ago. We're going back. Must see TV goes back to the 90s, so we're only talking 20, 30 years ago. But yet, I find it fascinating. I really find it fascinating that we've gone from three networks, and in order for a show to be renewed, you had to have like a 30 share
Yeah.
for a show. And now shows are being renewed with 5 share, 6 share, and that's of the people watching television. That's not the rating. I mean, the top rated television show, is it a 12, 13? Whereas it used to be 30, 40. I mean, it's just amazing
Yeah.
what what what
Well,
what has happened.
it's also the number of options that you have now. When it was three
Oh yeah,
networks,
yeah.
three networks and then a PBS channel maybe, or you get into the 70s and you start getting a couple of local channels in a bigger market, and then you get into the 80s and cable starts to
Mhm,
happen. There's just more
mhm.
options for people to do, plus the proliferation of things like video games, which will take some of that storytelling and put it in a different package it in a different form that certain people enjoy more. They want that interactivity with it. So you've got your movies, you've got your television, you've got your video games, books, audiobooks, getting outside and just doing stuff, podcasts, all of these different ways in which to take in information and entertainment that spreads it out. But I think at the same time, it also makes for what we're getting to be distilled and to be better. Even if the rating isn't as high on a global scale, it can be a better product, because some things that rate high aren't that good, but they're popular. Pop music can be that way. Now, not all of it, obviously. I'm not going to paint with the broad brush and just say pop music is terrible, but a lot of it is simplistic. It's not going to challenge you in the way that other forms of music might, because it's not meant to. There's forms of television or movies that aren't meant to challenge you in the same way, but it doesn't, and that doesn't make them any less important, but it does make them easier to digest. And then you can look at stuff that's very challenging, it's very difficult to watch. Something like, a Schindler's List is a fantastic movie, but I don't run out and want to watch it again all the time like I do something like
Yeah,
Jurassic Park, which is the same director
yeah,
the same year. So,
yeah.
there's all sorts of stuff, and what I like is that there's all sorts of stuff for so many different people. And if Avatar is your thing, Avatar is out there, and you can watch that, and you've got 2 to 4 more movies coming in the next 8 years, or 6 years, I guess. It's
Yeah.
2028.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Plus, I want to see what he does with 13 years of technological advancement, because you look at the motion capture in this; it's really good. Like we've gone way down the rat hole, and haven't even talked about the technical aspects of like what Cameron did making this movie, um, and it's fantastic. Like, it looks really good, and it sounds good, and the music is great. It's a fun experience to watch this movie.
That's what, you hit on one of the reasons why I think James Cameron is such a groundbreaking director, because of what he does. Again, we've gone back, we've mentioned this a bunch of times. Lucas and Star Wars, that changed cinema.
Oh yeah, big
Movies that
time.
made it. You talk about movies that made us. Again, Star Wars, that changed what cinema was. And of course, Lucas had his industrial light and magic, or magic and light, whatever it was. But you understand where I'm going.
Hmm.
Same thing with James Cameron with Avatar. Avatar changed what you could do, or what the possibilities were. Just as in some ways, Matrix has changed
Oh yeah.
movies because of what they did. So you're right. You want to see what the next evolution is. You want to see where Cameron goes with this. And again, you touched on it, and we've said this, we kind of repeat ourselves every so often. Hollywood wants something they know. They got something they have. They want nostalgia. They want to move forward with something that they know. There's it's a comfortable old shoe.
Hmm.
Avatar is that. The question is going to be, again, will it again I think it's not if it does as well as the first one. Listen, there is only one movie in the history that sequel has won an Oscar for Best Picture, and that was The Godfather. Okay, nothing else has happened like that. So I don't think anybody realistically is going to say, "Oh, this Avatar movie is going to do better." But again, if you get that nostalgia appearance, and again, we're talking 5 months from now, again, how much further along are we going to be in regards to the pandemic, in regard to COVID? Will people feel more comfortable? Will people want to go see this movie in the theater? And again, if it does do that and it gets people back and people say, hey, this is pretty good, it whets their appetite for the next one. If
Sure.
it's a bomb, I still think it whets. You're going to have those fans that are going to go see this movie in 2024. Again, I think what you'll do after that 2024 movie is you then take a look and you say, okay, where are we now? What are we going to do here? Because again, now listen, I can't predict the future. We're going a couple years down the road. Um, as we saw with Carrie Fisher with the Star Wars movie, she died. That was unexpected,
Hmm.
and that threw a monkey wrench into what Star Wars was doing with 7, 8, 9. Um, so again, you don't know, and I'm not trying to be maudlin here or gruesome, but you don't know what's going to happen. You have no idea what is going to happen.
Sure. Oh,
So
definitely.
I think I think everyone is looking forward to this movie. I think it'll be interesting to see where it goes and what happens. And again, I think your point on Sam Worthington is very good. And I think that's what I'm going to look forward. I mean, I think I'm going to now point to that because of you. So I give you credit, my friend. You give me something to look forward to and look at with a discerning eye for this Avatar movie. But again, listen, let's face it, they're going to still have the beautiful views of Naboo, and it's going to be. I don't think that's going to sell the movie.
I am in no way worried about how this Avatar 2 is going to look. I think it's going to look fantastic because look, James Cameron just knows how to make a movie look good. I am very hopeful that we will see a progression in Sam Worthington's acting, but also in Cameron's script. And I'm hoping that the 13 years and maybe he took some notes from that and can just massage that a little bit and give us. That's what I want to see. I want to see a better story. I don't even care that like the whole, it's Dances with Wolves just with alien with 9 foot tall blue cat aliens. Fine. That I don't care about that. Like I don't care that you're retreading that story, but make my characters a little bit more compelling for me. Give me just a little bit more. And because I think Cameron has that in him. So I'm curious to see what happens with it. But am I going to turn down, like, if somebody's like, hey, I want to watch Avatar, I'm not going to say no. I'm going to sit back and enjoy it. But having seen it now and I hadn't seen it since I saw it in 2009. It had been 13 years between watching this movie. And so watching it the second time, I still had a good time with it. I still enjoyed it, but it left me wanting in a way that, it wasn't the like, ooh, I can't wait to watch more Avatar. It's like I wanted a little bit more out of Avatar, and so that's what I'm hoping that the sequel will give me. So we'll see.
The thing, what I wanted to just quickly mention, as I was looking at this, I think part of what your, not criticisms, but your concerns are about this, I think were related to the fact that the movie it took, the movie they kept wavering their support on this movie. It was James Cameron at the time, and he was a good guy, but there was kind of, do you like it? I don't know, maybe not. Now I think there is concerted effort, and they'll say he can do it, and I gotta feel that this will not have the same pitfalls that the first one did.
I'm hopeful that it doesn't, and I don't predict that it will have the same pitfalls. But I'm always kind of when it's a movie that I'm not 100% sold on, like you tell me Taika Waititi's making a new movie, I'm sold because of everything I've seen of his. It hasn't let me
Yes,
down yet. If you tell me
agreed.
Edgar Wright is working on a new movie, I'm in because everything I've seen of Edgar Wright's does that for me. With Cameron, because of what my memory was of Avatar, it's not that I'm not in 100%. I'm in like 70, 80%. I'm still going to see it. I'm still going to probably enjoy myself, but it's like, is it going to be, I'm not going to overextend my expectations, which will help
Mhm.
me to not then be disappointed by that because I'm tempering that expectation. So we'll see. We got a few months till that comes out, and we'll see kind of how it goes. But I'm really glad that you got to see this finally and sort of get to experience that. And now if you ever go back to Disney, you can enjoy the ride even more because you'll have that backstory now. It'll make more sense.
Oh, listen, it was funny because, when we were talking about doing this spot on your show, what movies could we talk about? And when I mentioned Avatar, you was like, oh yeah, Avatar, that'd be a great one. We haven't done that, and now I finally am part of the club. I'm in on it now, so I get the Avatar thing now. You're right. I go back to Disney. We're going back. Where there's going to be family trip in January. So I'm hoping this time I go back to Avatar, I will now understand a little more about
Sure.
the pre-show, about all this stuff. And again, hopefully I will have seen the second one at that point. So then I will have that also behind, and I'll see that in a big screen. It's funny because I think you've kind of pumped me up. I would like to see it in a big screen. I would like to see it in a movie theater.
If you ever get a chance to, if it gets re-released and you can, I highly recommend it because it is like Top Gun Maverick. It's one of those that was purpose built for that experience.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's definitely worth seeing. But I hope you get to see it on a big screen because it'll change. It'll give you just that different viewpoint of the movie. You've seen it now, so you kind of know what's going on. But now you'll get to see just those visuals on a screen that size. And while I didn't talk about it a lot because, as we mentioned earlier, sort of 3D kind of went. It's still being produced. They're still putting stuff in theaters in 3D, but a lot of it, like this, was a movie that was conceptualized three-dimensionally, and it was one of those few experiences where that three-dimensional aspect of it worked in a way that was that never felt forced. There was never any gimmicky three-dimensional stuff. It just like was this depth that it added to it that you definitely don't get watching it at home. Which maybe that's why I noticed some of the story stuff a little bit more the second time because I wasn't as taken aback by the 3D and by the environments. Who knows? It's hard to say, but it's a good movie, and I'm just really glad that you got to see it. Now you can join the club with the rest of us who the rest of the world who had seen this movie. So
And I want to thank you for having me on the show tonight. This was really a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this. I can talk movies and TV all day and all night.
yeah, it does say a little bit something about the film of Avatar, how much time we spent talking about things other than the movie. But I mean, the conversation went where it went, and it's fun. And I'm with you. I can talk movies all day, all night about anything. I can just keep going. So this has been fun. Thank you, Trip, for coming on. This was a good time, and I'm really glad to get to show you this movie. Have you got anything that you're working on currently that you would like to let people know about, or where can they find you and your thoughts on movies?
All right. Well, you can find me. I do a weekly, what's called Trips Take, and it's available on all the major podcast services. It's usually about 10 minutes a week, and I talk about a lot of different things, but again, that's where I talk about movies mostly. And that's where you find me. And then I also, my side job, I guess, is I have an internet radio station. Oh, yeah, that's what that is. WTRSradio.com. And I will talk about movies sometimes on there, but mostly it's a music station. It's an oldies station, 60s, 70s, and 80s. So if
Okay.
you're a Stranger Things fan, you will recognize the music on that show on my radio station, and that's what I normally do. And you can find me in and around online. Also, I work professionally in radio at a local radio station here in Savannah.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Trip, for being on this week. This was a lot of fun. We are On this show, getting closer and closer to August, which means Cageapalooza, all Nick Cage, all month, for the 4th year in a row will be this year. So I've got that getting lined up. That's going to be fun. Come back and for that. Next week is a surprise. You'll just have to keep an eye on Twitter at TV's Travis and find out what movie I'm subjecting someone to next week. So until next week, Trip, thank you again for being on.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
For everyone else, enjoy your movies, whatever they may be, and let's be excellent to each other. There's been Wait You Haven't Seen.
You see? I mean, they're just pissing on us without even the courtesy of calling it rain.
And there we go. All right.
Just saving your MP3 for you.
Excellent. Thank you. And I will, here, let me send you the email address. You can send that to not tgmail.com. So I sent that to you in Discord. You can just shoot that over there, and this will go live in the podcast feed on Wednesday. And woo, that was a good.
I'll make sure I mention
long one. It was one of my longer episodes. We really got going on television and evolution of television and film.
And what I didn't mention, and this is something my buddy said this to me. My best friend said this to me a year and a half ago, and as time has gone on, I think he's right. What you're going to start seeing is the end of traditional over-the-air broadcast, especially in the smaller markets. They're going to start streaming. Mm-hmm. And I think, like I say, I'm in Savannah, Georgia. Well, in Savannah, Georgia, we have ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox.
Yep.
But CW is a digital channel. And I think, why are the networks going to pay them to carry these shows when they can stream them directly to the consumer? Now, I'm not saying that over the air is going to go away, because again, on their own stations, they're going to still broadcast them, I'm pretty sure. Mm-hmm. And part of it also is cable, the must carry rules on cable will delay this too. But again, these smaller stations that are, news and that kind of thing, they'll survive. But again, a lot of these affiliates, what do you need to pay somebody, especially in these smaller markets?
It's like all the sports networks and how what you used to have like individual networks that were regional, and now it's like everything is either Bally Sports this or Root that, because they gobbled them all up. Because why have an independent sports network in Detroit when you can have one that's owned by the same people and they can rebroadcast half the stuff? Because I can remember Pass in Detroit growing up watching Tigers and Pistons, and then it became Fox Sports Detroit, which is Bally Sports now, and all that stuff is changing too. We're in a land of flux. Area? I am. I'm in northern Michigan. Area? Yeah.
Oh, because you familiar with Fox 2 in Detroit?
I know it. I mean, I'm a couple hundred miles north in Michigan, so
okay. The reason why I say that is because the morning news anchor there is Jay Towers, and he's been in that market now for 15 years, 20 years. And Jay, I started him in radio as a high schooler. I've known him all these years. And Jay does the morning anchor on Fox, and he does morning drive on WNIC in Detroit.
Okay.
So, and the other claim to fame is free beer and hot wings. I knew them way back when.
Oh yeah,
they were in New Jersey with me. Yeah,
I remember them.
They're up there. I've known them for years too. But that's radio. Radio is one of these businesses that you never know who you know and stuff like that. And I went to school in Ohio, in northern Ohio, at Ashland, and I used to listen to CKLW in the 70s and 80s. I love CKLW. Oh my God, I always wanted to work there. Never did. But so those are my things in there, or my throwbacks in there.
Nice.
When you say you're and you wanted us, I just you said something that I touched on. You talked about movie theaters. Now, where you are you in a big city or are you in a small city?
No, I'm in a small town. We had so when I was real young, we had a two-screen theater in our downtown, and then we had a two-screen theater just outside of town, um,
Hmm.
by the big supermarket. Like it was in the parking lot of the
Hmm.
supermarket. And then
Hmm.
at one point, a new shopping mall went in and they put in a big old multiplex in there. And so it was like a 12 screen.
Hmm.
So we had, at one stage, we had a 12 screen in our shopping mall and then a standalone multiplex as the area grew. Now we're down to one. We have a giant AMC that they just rebuilt with an IMAX screen in about 5 or 6 years ago. Whole brand new building. It's got the nicer seats. It's got everything you want in a nice theater, which we didn't have for years. And then we have our They converted the two screen that was one of the original film theaters in our town. They converted it
Hmm.
back to a single screen, and it's like
Hmm.
it's like the old movie palaces. In fact, that was
Okay.
actually so Michael Moore is the co-founder of a film festival that started here in like
Okay.
2005, and part of what they
Cool.
did with that was renovating this theater and bringing it back to its former glory. So they ripped it down to the studs. They redid everything in there. They redid the balcony so there was actual balcony seating.
Oh my
Um,
God. Oh.
it's
Oh.
gorgeous. I got to watch all of Stanley Kubrick's films on that
Oh
screen
my
with that
God.
sound
Oh
system
my God.
in one over the course of 1 week. I was working as a
Oh
stage
my
manager
God.
for the film festival, so I was the head stage manager that year at that venue. It's called the State
Wow.
Theater. So I got to see 2001: A Space Odyssey on that
Wow.
screen, Barry
Oh my
Lyndon,
God.
all of those. I got to meet.
Oh my God.
We had Malcolm McDowell in town for A
Oh my
Clockwork
God.
Orange. It was
Oh
fantastic.
my God. Oh my God. That, listen, you talk about, balconies, okay? Um, in 1992, the 50th anniversary of Casablanca.
Mm.
I saw it in New York City at a theater with a balcony. And I sat in the balcony. I went alone. It was Easter night, but I was just like enthralled because I'd never seen it on a big screen. And I'm sitting in a balcony and I'm telling you, I just was like, ah,
Oh yeah.
and it was so cool. And you don't have those theaters anymore. And just to go on what I was talking about, when I moved down to, I lived in New Jersey. I lived in at the Jersey Shore. I lived in Tom's River.
Okay.
Yes, I was near Seaside Heights, the official Jersey Shore. I know exactly where it was. The movie theater I was talking about going to was like an hour away, and I would drive to that theater because they had the reclining seats. It was an AMC theater, reclining seats, and they had uh, Coke Freestyle machine, which had Mr. Pibb. Because I can only get Mr. Pibb there, and I can only get it at Checkers in Tom's River. The only place I could get it. So I would go there, and then they put the reclining seats in Brick. So I would drive to Brick for all the movies because again, I want that creature comfort.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
I didn't give a shit about the movie. There was this theater that we had in Manahawkin that, well, at the time it was built was the Cat's Meow. Now it's a piece of garbage. And I'd go there. Well, I moved down to Savannah. I thought I was moving to civilization, right? Oh no. We have two AMC theaters, a 10 plex, 11 plex and a 10 plex. In the 10 plex, they have what's called Big D, which is a bigger screen.
Yep.
Okay. But there's no reclining seats or anything like that. There was another theater on Eisenhower which closed within 3 months after I moved here. There was another theater that closed on Victory right after that. So AMC was the only game in town. They had, and I'm telling you, I was on a first name basis with guest relations. I'd go in there and I'd rip them. And I mean, this was an every time I went there occurrence. Well, I love to go to movies, and I was one of the AMC A-list people. Well, they took the afternoon matinees off. So I couldn't go to the movies in the afternoon. I'm like, if I have days off, I'm off during the week because I was going to Best Buy, and my fiance was at work. What am I going to do? I can't go to the movies. And that's where they shoot themselves in the foot. Well, when the pandemic hit and they closed theaters, I said, there's no way those AMC theaters will reopen. No way. They did,
Hmm.
which shocked me. But now another company has moved into the Victory Drive and they've renovated the whole place. They've got the reclining seats, they've got the freestyle machines, they've got the popcorn. And I'll tell you, I'll go there and their prices are cheaper than the other theater. But again, in Pooler, they have the world's largest IMAX.
Yep.
Now, to pay $28 to go see Top Gun Maverick, okay, I'll do that. I'm not going to pay $28 to go to IMAX to see Lightyear or to go see Elvis. I saw Elvis at the AMC theater because that's not what I'm about. But I'm about the experience. I'll pay $10 and $11 and go to the local theater with the reclining seats. That's me.
Hmm.
But I just that's the kind of movie guy I am, and I don't get it. I just don't get it. And those what you say about that theater sounds just wonderful. I would love to go to see a movie there. I would love to have a theater like that.
Those are the things that I think are going to last is the specialty houses, because they don't, that theater doesn't always show your first run big budget stuff. They're showing a lot of smaller fare, or they'll do things like I remember going to that theater and seeing an all-day marathon of Coen Brothers, where you could go and you could
Oh my
watch
God.
like 3 or 4
Oh
Coen
my
Brothers
God.
movies. They would, now it's been slow to build back up, but they would do like Friday night movies where it would be, it might be something like I think one week was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like a year after it was in theaters,
By
or
the way, one of the greatest movies, one of the greatest movies, and uh, my daughter is a huge Tarantino fan. She saw this before I did, and I said, Stephanie, tell me about it. She says, I can't tell you. Go watch it. You've got to go see it. And I went and saw it, and I was just like, I called her up and I said, oh my God. Oh my God. It was so, listen, Tarantino, Pulp Fiction. Oh my God. I left the theater and I went, oh my God, what a great movie. Um, Tarantino has done such good work. And Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, oh my God. And of course, being a radio guy, KHJ, 93 KHJ, oh my
right.
God. KHJ in Los Angeles. That's the holy grail. In fact, I one of the people I worked with used to work at KHJ. So he'd tell me stories about that place. And I was just like, oh my God, that was just so good. And I'm telling you, I just thought that was such a great movie. Again, I'd go to some place to see that. That'd be wonderful. But unfortunately, part of the problem is there's fewer of us around who will do that.
Yeah, I think also it's hard because the studios need to adjust how much they charge for movies. That's part of why like the State Theater here does the smaller films, is they can afford to actually buy them and
Mhm.
show them. Because their ticket prices
Yeah,
aren't super high
yeah.
and their concession prices aren't super high. That's where they make their money, but it's all volunteers that work it, except for I think they have like 2 staff members in the entire theater that are paid, um,
But
year round. But it's
still,
like
that's
it's tough. It's tough, and I know I've talked to, because one of the projectionists, before the pandemic, I think he stayed on, but he's a friend of mine growing up. Like was one of my was a roommate of mine for
mhm,
years, and
mhm.
so I got to kind of see the inside baseball of sort of everything that they went through getting movies there, and what they could do, what they couldn't do, all that kind of stuff. There was a lot to it, but I want to see stuff like that flourish because I love seeing that. I love going and in experiencing that. That's just something that has been part of my life for a long time. So, but it is
I
10 o'clock now, and I've got to get.
I'm sorry.
No, you're
I'm
fine. But
sorry.
I got to get the dog. She's gonna want to go outside, and then I have work in the morning.
I, Again, I apologize. I
Nope.
apologize.
Mm.
Again, always enjoyable. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'll send you that audio before I leave. All
Absolutely.
right.
Thanks for being on, Trip.
All right. Take care. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you for having me.
Have a good one. Thank you, everyone, for hanging around and being here. You guys are great, as always. Looks like Ace may have taken off, unfortunately, because I was going to going to talk about the box office stuff, but that's all right. Faye, thanks for being here. And Nisbet, as always. You guys are great. And I'll talk to everybody soon. No, those were the days tomorrow night, but I think Amy was talking about maybe streaming. So there might be that happening. We'll see. And no Highlander this week with Audie on vacation. We're taking a little break between seasons. So keep an eye out. I'll probably do some extra game streams or something this week. We'll see. But until I see you, be good, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.